Good morning. You are listening to the Alex Feuz Show, bringing you all of the news, sports debates, interviews with people you all care about, and so much more. Every single weekday on Dean College Power 88 Radio, broadcasting live from 7 to 8 a.m. And now, here's your host, Alex Feuz.
I actually thought we should be on a threat to go to the finals. That did not make a move. Everybody else made a move. Toronto made a move, and Philadelphia made a move, and Milwaukee made a move, and even I think probably Indiana. They did nothing. And I didn't have a problem with that because their issue wasn't talent. It had nothing to do with raw talent. It had to do with cohesiveness and fit and mesh. And it was the polar opposite of the way they ended up this 2017-18 season when people around here totally fell in love with this team in a way that was astonishing to me. It was probably as loved a team as any team, including the 07-08 champions since the '86 Celtics. I'm not kidding. People loved that team, and it was it was all for one and one for all. And that was none of that last year, and they just didn't do it. And the kids didn't react well to the insertion of Irving and Hayward, and it just didn't work well. Well, I'm expecting a purge, a mental purge. I'm expecting them to come back. I'm expecting Brad Stevens, and Brad couldn't corral this, and he'll be the first one to tell you. But I think that they're going to learn from that, and I think that Tatum and Brown are going to benefit specifically from the experience on Team USA, even though they didn't win, and we all know they finished 7th eventually, but there was still a good experience for them to have that kind of exposure. I think they're going to benefit from that. I'm optimistic. I'm looking forward to the season. I really think that they're going to surprise a lot of people.
You know, when you talk about beloved Celtics teams, you know, when you rank them, you know, for so many years, what would you consider the top 5 beloved Celtics team? And do you feel like...
boy, that's a tough one off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Now. That's... you know, obviously the best team was 85-86, and anybody who's even a modest student of Celtic history understands that was the best team on paper, the team they would have beaten all the other Celtic teams. I said, including the Russell teams, which we can talk about. But there were a couple of the Russell teams that were one team, I believe it was 60-61 or 61-62, one or the other. There were 8 guys who went to the Hall of Fame, which of course is another story entirely. They were good. They were very good. One of the greatest Celtic teams did not win the championship, and that, of course, was 72-73 when they won 68 games. The best running team probably of them all, and lost in the playoffs when John Havlicek was injured in Game 3 against the Knicks, and they wound up losing a heartbreak. Game 7 was not a heartbreaker. Game 7 was a dud, but they wound up losing to the Knicks, and the Knicks went on to win their second championship. But that team has to be in any ranking of top 5 all-time great Celtic teams. But I'd have to sit down and you know, no 7-08 is definitely going to be in the discussion, no question, of the top 5. But I need to do a little more thorough analysis. But one thing we can be certain: you start with 85-86 and you go from here.
Again, Boston Globe writer and Boston legend Bob Bryant is joining now on the Alex Feuz Show. Bob, again, you've been in this business for so many years, and you've had so many great years, and just so many great stories. When you look back, and you know, what continues to drive your love for this game of basketball?
Well, I love the game. I like the competition. I've been aware of the sport of basketball since 1951, when my father was one of the people in charge of the local grammar school basketball league in my hometown of Trenton, New Jersey, and I was a 5-year-old kid turning the manual scoreboard. And then he went to Villanova as assistant athletic director the next year, and I spent 3 winters going to games in the Palestra at Convention Hall in Philadelphia, and constantly on weekends, and got immersed in college basketball. And we went to games at Princeton. I've been aware, and so I played it, and that's what I was able to play, and I still enjoy the game, but not as much as I did once upon a time, for the simple reason that the three-point shot is like a fungus that's infected the game, and it has ruined certain aspects of the game, and in my opinion, and I know this is not a majority opinion, but I think it's the single worst thing to happen to basketball in my lifetime. And it's distorted the game at every level, and the game is less enjoyable to me than it once was. But I still like it. I just don't like it quite as much.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think you enjoy it?
Because it's distorted the game. It's all about that and nothing else. I like pivot play. I like. Where's the Kevin McHale's? There aren't any. There are a couple of people who could become that kind of a player, not to the degree that he did, because he's the greatest of his type ever play. But there's big guys that we'd like to see maneuver. I like low post play, but it's extinct. And it's all about eaves. It's all about 3 points. It's all about that and pick and roll. 3 point pick and roll. 3 points and pick and roll. What else is it? I don't enjoy that as much watching this, and particularly when they're clunking them up there. And I always go back, and the sick dependence on it is just ridiculous. The Warriors would have one more championship if they had just settled for one lousy little 2 in that final 3 minutes against the Cavaliers that year, instead of cranking up 2s and 3s and 3s and 3s, and all they needed was one little 2, but then it doesn't even occur to them to try to get a 2, and they wound up losing. The game is just distorted, as I said, and then the idea of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids cranking up long-distance shots is preposterous, but that's the world we're living in.
Do you think it's all about social media? And, how exactly do you feel like social media has affected all sports? Because we see it now with baseball. There's so many of this young generation because, I'm 19 years old and a sophomore in college. And, it happens every single night. I have baseball on because it's baseball season. It's a week before the baseball postseason. And people walk into the lounge in our resident halls and they're like, baseball, turn that off.
Well, that's another story entirely, the issue of baseball. So it's that's a whole separate discussion. Obviously, I fear for the future of baseball in that regard. That it's not a game that's attuned to the times at all, and it's not doing itself any favors with these long games, obviously. That's a whole. Yeah, I worry about that. But football should be worried too about who's going to be playing it in 25 years. I keep saying the mothers of America could shut football down tomorrow, and they could. It's not likely to happen in the South yet. That'll be the last bastion. That might be the last place in 2040 where they're playing football. But they have to worry about that too. And I mean, I'll tell you something. The whole idea of spectator sports. I'll tell you what really concerns me. In terms of the attitude and the interest level, it's esports. It's the idea that they're so enormously popular, which isn't even the real thing. It's something else, And of course, games. The video games in general. The Fortnite. They call this the Fortnite generation, and that is overtaking real sports and interest and to a large measure. It's going to be a very interesting landscape if I could fast forward to 2040 or 50, which I won't be here, but to see what it looks like. Remember this, all this organized sports that we're talking about that you're growing up with and I grew up with and then my grandfather grew up with, this only dates back 150 years roughly. And that's a very small blip on the history. Who knows what will people be doing in their leisure time in 2200? Who knows? They weren't doing what we're doing now in 1800, and they started doing it roughly in the 1850s. Baseball's first league wasn't, as we know, it wasn't until 1871. So we're going to have 150th anniversary coming up of the original National Association, and the National League itself will have a 150th anniversary in 2026. And that's not a lot historically. So, these are interesting philosophical questions.
This is my favorite segment on the show. It's a Fast 5 quick round. So it's 5 quick questions, and you have however long to take to answer them. So the first one for you, if you could create another new podcast with anyone, who would you want to host it with?
Bill Walton.
Favorite movie?
Casablanca. No question. I've got a poster of it in my office.
Go-to snack? It's a tough one.
No, I'm gonna go-to snack. I don't know. Reese's peanut butter cups.
Ooh, that's a good one. Favorite arena you've ever been to?
Arena or stadium? Are you talking about indoor arena
Yeah,
or outdoor
yeah,
stadium?
like a stadium.
Tiger Stadium.
This is going to be a really tough one. Most underrated basketball player you've ever covered?
Ah, I like that. Underrated that I ever covered. I would say maybe Paul Silas. I would Paul Silas. I would say because he never gets discussed about in terms of Hall of Fame, but at his prime, he was considered to be the best at a certain aspect, the best offensive rebounder in the game for years, and a leader among a true leader. So I'd say Paul Silas.
Last question for you, Bob. What would have to be your favorite moment you've ever had in your career?
It's so hard to pick one. It really is. I always answer that question. Favorite moment? Oh boy, I don't know. The first, I'll just the one that was important at the time because it was like the culmination. I felt like had been a part of the story, and watching it go from literally nothing, and that was Celtics winning a championship in '74. After I started covering the team in '69, and then watching the new, the first post-Bill Russell team win, and watching the growth of Dave Cowens as a player and getting to know those guys the way I knew them, and in a way that you're not going to be able to do that today. So I felt enormously. It was enormously satisfying on a professional level and a personal level. It was the first championship team I got to cover. Okay, so who knew? I never knew I was going to have the privilege of covering so many. But in all four sports, which I was able to do. But I'd say maybe you could start there. That was an enormous feeling that day in Milwaukee when the Celtics won, and I watched. It was like watching my kid grow up.
Well, Bob, I have to say thanks again for taking the time out of your day this morning to come on the Alex Feuz show today. And I have to quickly tell you that here at Dean College, we have a gym here that's actually called Louis Perry Gymnasium. And I guess back in the 60s, the Boston Celtics actually practiced in Perry Gymnasium here, and Bill Russell actually played a game here at Dean College. So I got to find more information about that. And when I do, I'll have to let you know.
Great. You should. I fittingly, I told Brad Stevens I'd love to take him on a tour of some of the places the Celtics used to practice.
Oh, yeah.
Including the Cambridge YMCA, where they had to go out and beat the meters on Mass Ave. and seriously, and now of course they have this phenomenal facility in Brighton, the Red Auerbach Center, which is like a Taj Mahal of practice facilities. No, that's great. Unearth the details on that one. That's great.
Yeah, so thanks again, Bob, for coming on the Alex Feuz show today. Greatly appreciate it.
Okay, welcome, Alex. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. You just heard it from Boston legend, Mr. Bob Ryan. He's been in the business since the 1960s and one of the best in the area at what he does. And then he's just one of the